Good evening, race fans. This is Rob from the Area 51 Racing Podcast. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I am a little late on doing my race recap. If you haven't heard or haven't seen our podcast from the other night, last week, Thursday, I had right hip surgery, so I haven't been feeling too great. So that's the reason why I wasn't on the podcast on Tuesday night, and then the reason why my race recap has been pushed to tonight. As you can see over there, I have a walker, which I'm referring to as Walker Texas Ranger, that I have to use to walk with for a period of time. I know Bobby and Dave the other night, excuse me, on the podcast, were joking around that they're gonna push me around in a little cart or scooter or something when we're in Charlotte in September. Hopefully by then, I pray to God that I will not have that thing and that I will be able to walk on my own like normal with my cane, like I usually do. So, but on that note, this is going to be episode 68 of the Area 51 Racing Podcast. Tonight is my race recap from this past weekend at Talladega Speedway for the NASCAR Xfinity Series and NASCAR Cup Series races. The Truck Series was off this past weekend. I will give you the race results for Jeremy Clements Racing, and then I'll also give you Rob's racing hot takes from this week in NASCAR. To get started, our race recap this week is going to be brought to you by Schatzensbach Landscaping. Schatzensbach Landscaping is a small business owned by Lee Schatzensbach Sr. in the Lehigh County area in Pennsylvania. They offer full service landscaping and landscaping design, lawn care, tree care, and tree trimming. Check out Schatzensbach Landscaping on their Facebook page and also on the internet. If you are in the Lehigh Valley area in Pennsylvania and you need some landscaping work done, tree service, lawn service, whatever it may be, give Lee Sr. a call at 484-553-3823 or send him a message on his Facebook page. Make sure you tell him that Bobby, Dave, and Rob from the Area 51 Racing Podcast sent you. Lee Sr. will take good care of you. Let's get into the race report for Jeremy Clements this past weekend. There was no practice on Friday. Saturday, they went out and qualified, and Jeremy actually qualified P10. He had a really pretty fast car right off the trailer. And for later on in the race, unfortunately on lap 2, Jeremy came on the radio and said that he's having some steering issues, that the car is really darty and he is having trouble holding the car straight. His crew chief, Case Kallenbach, said that he thought maybe it possibly could be a tow issue, as they have the toe on the car adjusted a certain way because it will makes the car go faster, and it could cause the car to feel like the way Jeremy was describing. At the end of the stage, Case had the pit crew service the car, and they adjusted the toe on the right front of the car. When they went back out after their service, they were informed, or their pit stop service, I should say, they're informed that they got a penalty as they had a pit crew member over the wall too soon. So as a result, they decided to come back down pit road and top off with fuel, as they had to start at the end of the tail of the longest lane anyways. Jeremy ended up finishing stage 1 in P22. Stage 2, the steering issue continued. He said it was a little bit better before the total adjustment, or I should say it was a little better than before the total adjustment was made, but was still darty and the turn was lagging. During this stage, they ran the fastest lap of the race, 49.6. that stood up for the remainder of the race, and as a result, they earned a playoff point for this. This was the second time that Jeremy Clements has won this the fastest lap award in a race this year. The other was at Daytona, so both super speedway tracks. They got the fastest lap award and a playoff point, which is good to see. That Hendrick Motorsports power plant and the hard work that the race team is doing in the shop and at the track is definitely paying off and showing up. Jeremy ended up finishing stage 2, P24. Stage 3, unfortunately, the same thing. Steering issue actually got worse, I should say. Jeremy said the car was rough to drive and was very uncomfortable. I can't keep it going in one direction all the time. Due to the steering issues, Jeremy at this time dropped to the back of the field to get out of the hornet's nest and to prepare for the big wreck that always happens at the end of the race, especially in the third stage of the race. He did stay out of the wreck. However, he was not able to really advance his position and ultimately finished the race P26. Jeremy currently sits P19 in the driver's point standings, so he didn't go down or up this past week in the standings. And the Xfinity race in general was a good race. There was a lot of 3 and 4 wide racing at times. The race actually ended on the white flag lap when Jesse Love, the number 2 car for Richard Childress Racing Chevy, and the Connor Zilich the number 88 Junior Motorsports Chevy made contact, causing Zilich to spin nose first into the inside wall. It was a nasty hit, and this brought out the caution as the field was on the backstretch going into turn 3, I believe. And at the time, it froze the field when the caution came out. So at the time, Jeb Burton, the 27 Chevy of Jordan Anderson Racing, and the 21 Chevy of Austin Hill for Richard Childress Racing were basically, it looked side by side on the still videos and photos that they took on track at the time of the caution came out and the field was frozen. NASCAR ultimately did a photo and video review, and based on the timeline and everything, they determined that Austin Hill was the winner of the race. In a post-race interview with Jeb Burton, he became very emotional and said that they were going to protest the race results, as on the videos they were showing him during his interview, he felt his car was ahead of Hill's at the time of the caution. And then also they were showing him still photos as well. I don't believe that they ended up protesting the race. I didn't see anything or hear anything. So, the top 5 for this week in the Xfinity Series race was Austin Hill, the 21 Chevy for Richard Childress Racing. P2 was Jeb Burton, and the number 27 Chevy for Jordan Anderson Racing. P3 was Jesse Love, and the number 2 RCR, Richard Childress Racing Chevy. P4 was Justin Allgaier and the number 7 Junior Motorsports Chevy. And then P5 was Matt DiBenedetto and the number 99 Viking Motorsports Chevy. I believe this was Matty D's first or best finish, I should say, this season. He actually was in contention a majority of the race. He ran in the front, towards the front of the pack, and was in contention towards the end for the win. Unfortunately, just didn't pan out to where he was able to get clear to move forward enough. As a result of the lower back injury sustained in the crash Connor Zilich was in, he's not going to be able to race this weekend at Texas. NASCAR did give him a waiver, so he is still eligible for the playoffs in the Xfinity Series. Cup driver Kyle Larson has been announced to be the fill-in for Zilich in the number 88 Junior Motorsports Chevy. This Saturday's Xfinity Series race is on the CW at 1 p.m. and it's at Texas Motor Speedway. The NASCAR Cup Series race on Sunday. Let's just put it this way. It was a boring race. I didn't watch the whole race. I actually fell asleep after, I think it was maybe even in the middle of the second stage or right around then. I basically the most exciting thing of the whole race, in my opinion, was at the end of stage one where Joey Logano went off on a profanity-laced tirade against his Penske teammate Austin Cindric in the number 2 Penske Ford, because Cindric ended up pushing the number 2311 Toyota driven by Bubba Wallace to get this stage win for at the end of stage one. Logano just lost his crap and just went off. I was like, holy cow, because he was mad that Bubba ended up winning and Cindric, his Ford teammate, pushed him to the win instead of a Ford teammate. But it gets even better. Later, Major League Baseball great, former Atlanta Braves player Chipper Jones, actually got on social media. He's apparently a huge NASCAR fan, which I didn't know, but that's pretty cool. He got on social media and got on Logano for his profanity-laced tirade against Cindric, and it continued on. Other people joined in. Logano was later interviewed, I think it was on Monday, about it, and he just basically, he just basically said, and the gist of it was he didn't care. So about Jones, what he was said and stuff. So, Joey Logano, I guess, again, did not make a friend or friends based on his reaction to what happened on track. But like I said, that was probably the most exciting thing in the race, because it was pretty much side-by-side racing the entire race. The only time you could pass was on restarts, or several cars went when you pulled out a line and were able to get enough momentum to move forward. Otherwise, you didn't go anywhere. You could gain track positions on pit stops, if there was a caution and you decided to stay out. But basically, it was one of those races where everybody was going not full throttle. They were saving fuel and just riding around. And a prime example is at the end of the race, Kyle Larson in the 5 car and his teammate William Byron in the 24 car were in 3rd and 4th place in the second row behind the race leader Austin Cindric, the number 2 Penske Ford, and Ryan Preece in the number 60 RFK Ford. They didn't pull out a line. They just stayed behind Preece and Cindric. And it's been a discussion. I know I heard Kyle Busch talk about it on the Door Bumper Clear podcast. I've heard some other I saw some other videos, I should say, on social media where some other drivers were talking about it. And Kyle Busch basically said that it was as a result of, I think he thought they were afraid to pull out, because if they pulled out, they were going to get hung out if nobody went with them, and they were going to drop away to the back. And they were possibly waiting for a wreck to happen in order to try to gain an advantage to be able to pass them at that point. Ultimately, that didn't happen. the race ended up extremely close. I mean, I guess that was exciting. The finish between Cindric and Ryan Preece, Cindric ended up winning by 0.0022 seconds. But which was Austin Cindric's first win this season, locking in the number 2 Penske Ford team into the playoffs. Austin's a good guy, and he has a good team behind him. It's good to see him back in the playoffs and get another win. But post-race inspection, ironically, the number 22 Penske Ford, Joey Logano, was disqualified for having a loose spoiler bolt, and the number 60 RFK Ford of Ryan Preece was also DQ'd for having 3 spoiler shims instead of the maximum 2 spoiler shims allowed. So it would have been interesting that if Ryan Preece ended up beating Cindric, he would have been disqualified, had the win taken away from him, and then Cindric would have ended up winning anyway. So, but this race, and I'll get into it in my hot takes, this race, the product that Cup is bringing right now with this Gen 7 or current gen car, whatever they want to call it, is terrible. It is not, the racing's not good. It's terrible. The short track package is shit. It just sucks. And now you got where guys, there's no fall off on the tires. So you really don't have to worry about tires. You manage your fuel. So you're right around at 50-60% throttle, just like you're driving down the freeway side by side, because you can't pass and you want to make sure you can have enough, fuel to make a longer run to, get on a different strategy or whatever of a competitor. It sucks. And I'm not the only one with this opinion. Like I said, I'll get into some statements in my Rob's hot takes, but yeah, the Cup Series is back at Texas as well this weekend, and I believe trucks are too. Yes, so all 3 series are racing this weekend at Texas Speedway. So Texas Speedway is one of those tracks. Not a fan of the racing. Really isn't that great there since they, I believe they repaved it, and as a result of that, it's just hasn't been the same. So we'll see what happens this weekend. We'll move on to Rob's racing hot takes for this week in NASCAR. My first one, again, it goes back to Catherine Legg. Unfortunately, there are a bunch of keyboard warriors and stupid idiots out there that have started to send death threats on social media, on Catherine's social media platforms to her, because she has been involved in a couple of wrecks and the races that she's raced in. This week in Talladega, during the third stage, Eric Almirola cleared himself and took her out. It wasn't her fault at all. I'm glad Almirola stood up and said, nope, it wasn't her fault. It was mine. She did a great job. She was doing really well until that moment when Almirola made a boneheaded mistake and cleared himself and made came across the front nose of Legg's car and made her wreck, or spin and wreck. It's crazy. And to go even farther, everybody's bashing these females in racing, and I get it, it's a male dominated sport, but females there's a lot of good young females or older females for that matter that have raced in all levels of racing. I mean, Kylie Glick is a prime example. 14-year-old girl in Northern California. Her first year was last year in a full body stock car, and she ended up winning the junior late model track championship at All American Speedway in California. She also got the rookie of the year in the pro late model division at All American Speedway, and third place, I believe it was, in points at All American Speedway, which is a NASCAR sanctioned track. She's very talented. She's partnered with we partner with her, and she partners with our podcast. In fact, her and her family was a guest the other night on our episode 67. Her grandfather Bob and her great uncle Chuck were on there with her and her mom Miranda, and they talked about their family's racing history. There's three generations that were on the show that race, and then Bob and Chuck's dad, or Kylie's great grandfather, he also raced. So, these families have, what I'm getting at is, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you have the talent to race and the ability to race, you should be able to. I mean, this is just stupid because they're females. That these closed-minded morons are going off, and I mean, it's a freaking car race. It's not like something that, in the grand scheme of things, is something that's extremely important in your life, that if it didn't happen, you wouldn't be able to survive. I mean, it's a sporting event. I mean, there's a lot more important things that I can think about that I would be upset about than a female racing in NASCAR. I mean, it's asinine. And especially to send somebody death threats because of it. I mean, and here's a tweet that I'm going to read from Amber Balkin. She is a female driver that races in the ARCA Menard series, I believe, from Venturini Motorsports. I could be wrong, but I believe it is Venturini. This is her tweet today. I mean, she's getting the same thing. I mean, from people on her social media. Her tweet says, "Took less than 1 minute of scrolling through this weekend's comments to realize it doesn't matter how feminine or not you portray yourself to be. If you're a woman in the sport, you will be scrutinized for not just your ability, but for the way you look. One thing I know for sure, we are all just trying to be authentic to who we are as humans while being the best race car drivers we can be. Every woman I know in this sport worked their butts off to be here, and I'm proud of every single one of them." I agree with her 100%. It just blows my mind how stupid and close-minded people are about females in racing. I mean, racing just is an example, but in other things in life too. I mean, this is crazy. They're just as capable as a male. I know some male who are race car drivers or have been race car drivers that there's no way in hell they belonged in a race car. They just couldn't race safely. And I know, there's some females too that I know that it's the same way. However, I'm not out there bashing any of them. I'm not saying, I'm sending death threats or anything like that. That's asinine. I don't understand it. And, it's pretty sad when, NASCAR's been around for a long, long time. And, it's not like this is a new thing that women are in motorsports. Women have been in motorsports for a long time. I mean, drag racing NASCAR, IndyCar, you name it. It's not like this is something new that just started to happen. They've been around. They've been in the sport for a long time, and they're no different than anybody else. They are scrutinized more because they're in a male-dominated sport, unfortunately. And I just, in my opinion, guys, just lay off, enjoy the sport, give them credit for what they're doing, and have fun. Find something better to do than sit on social media and send death threats to a woman who's racing a car. I mean, that's again, I'm sorry, I'm beating a dead horse here, but I guess that's not probably a good terminology. It's like just just stop. I guess is the best way to go. Best thing to say. We'll move on to my hot take number 2. Basically, the state of NASCAR, the NASCAR Cup Series, with this current gen car. The short track package sucks. And this weekend, the super speedway race sucked. They basically rode around like they're on a freeway side by side, saving gas at 60%, whatever throttle, and nobody could pass. If you pulled out and nobody came with you, or enough cars didn't come with you, you went right to the back, or you lost at least 5 or 6 spots. And it was crazy. And when this race catches the ire of the king, Richard Petty, and his crew chief, Dale Inman, you would think NASCAR would start listening. I mean, Mark Martin has said stuff before. You've had other NASCAR legends and greats say stuff about this current gen car. Fans are on NASCAR about this, and it's like falling on deaf ears. But basically, this is what Richard Petty, the king, said on the Petty Family Racing podcast. I got this the quote from the Lucky Dog on Track, the NASCAR newsletter that they send out, and basically he says, after the Jack Links 500 at Talladega Super Speedway, Petty was referring to Austin Cindric's triumph when he described the race as more of a quote happening, end quote, than a real competition with cars just running down the line. Petty said it looked like a pace lap every time. They happened to throw the green flag, somebody threw the checkered flag, and the number 2 won the race. He was extremely disappointed and basically was painting a picture. It says that NASCAR Cup Series has lost its edge. Petty doesn't blame the drivers, not even the rookies. Instead, he pointed the finger squarely at the technology or this current gen Cup car. I mean, and then his crew chief even said, Dale Inman, the cars brought a lot of this on, referring to the technology again. It's the car. And Petty also goes on to, the next gen car has turned fierce competition to a dull parade. Even the quote save the gas end quote strategy wasn't spared, as Petty ridiculed it with cutting sarcasm, making it clear he sees today's racing as a far cry. That is 100% true. And this is coming from one of the greatest race car drivers in NASCAR history. He's won at Talladega. And you would think, NASCAR would be listening and say, if Richard Petty, one of our greatest race car drivers, comes up and says, hey, we have a problem here, and we probably should look into this and try to figure this out. Maybe, like I said, my last show, maybe they need to create a what do you want to call it? A council or an committee, whatever, that is made up of like Richard Petty, Mark Martin. You could do Kenny Wallace. These great legendary drivers that have been around the sport for a long time still are involved in the sport in some way, shape, or form. And listen to what they have to say along with these current race car drivers and team owners, and then also take some of this input from the fans. This is an entertainment. Racing is an entertainment, but you don't need to do gimmicks and crap to make the racing better. It should be, you just like the sport, and that's the entertainment part of it. But when the sport is becoming boring because of the product you put on the track to make apparently cheaper for teams and equality for all the teams by them all having used the same parts and everything along those lines with this current gen car. And then you got, wheels, bigger wheels, shorter sidewalls. Yeah, no fall off on the tires. You can't, I mean, the racing's not great. Every once in a while, you'll get a good race like Atlanta has been a good race. But other than that, it really is, not great. And then Kyle Busch even was quoted as saying, and I heard him on Door Bumper Clear, and he said that basically, I felt disgraceful myself being a race car driver, wanting to go fast, lead laps, and win the Daytona 500. And that was our strategy that we had to employ at the start of the race because everybody was doing it. Fuel saving strategy has become a new norm, and it seems not everyone is on board. I mean, why in the hell should they be riding around at 60% throttle to save fuel, where in the past they had their foot to the floor and they were drafting, they were with this previous gen car, you could pass, the racing was good. Honestly, again, my opinion is this current gen car is junk. The project has come to a conclusion, and it's time to do something drastic. Like I suggested last week on my podcast, go to the Xfinity Series platform. That way, you have Xfinity car and a Cup car. They're the same, except for the Cup car has a bigger engine, like 1,000 horsepower. Maybe different shocks, whatever, but make it the same. That way you're saving money. You got teams that race in both the series. You're going to have an easier transition for drivers. And a lot of these Cup guys like to drive the Xfinity cars. The racing is, in my opinion, is in the Xfinity series is the best, except for the couple times this year when it's on short tracks became a wreck fest because of stupidity by some of these young drivers. I don't know. I just and then the other thing that really blows my mind, Elton Sawyer, who is the NASCAR Senior Vice President of Competition, post-race to Talladega, states that the overtaking action, or he was referring to the overtaking action or passing on the Sirius XM podcast. He said, quote, "You have 67 lead changes amongst 23 different drivers. So when we took all of when we look at all of that, what are we trying to fix? But let's just say it only added fuel to an already burning fire. Elton Sawyer used to be a race car driver, and his wife, Patty Moyse, used to be a race car driver as well. First off, 67 lead changes by 23 different drivers. I have no idea where the hell he was getting that from. And from what I was seeing, unless your nose was inching by the other car and he was considering that a lead change pass, then okay, that's where you're going to get your 67 things. Either on restarts, pit cycles, or when they're racing 2, 3, 4 wide, which was not very often. And somebody came out ahead by a bumper or whatever, half of a bumper. There wasn't, I mean, that's the only way you could have got the 67 lead changes, because everybody was driving around 2x2x2 doing this fuel saving crap. And if they did pull out, they were going backwards. I mean, that just blows my mind. And then for Elton Sawyer to say this, and it says, you know, it basically added fuel to the already burning fire. I mean, not only do you have NASCAR fans, they're OG fans like me, pissed about the quality of racing on the track because of this current gen car. There's so many issues. Then you come up with, you know, Richard Petty, the king of racing, comes out and says, you know, basically this race was a joke. It was like watching cars driving down the interstate next to each other. And then, you know, his legendary crew chief, Dale Inman, saying it's because of the cars and technology, as is Richard Petty. You know, yeah, Mark Martin has said stuff before, like I've said, and it's like, NASCAR, come on, pull your heads out of your butt and let's do something. Instead, we are going to do all these things to, like, for example, these gimmick things. The All-Star race. NASCAR was going to have a run what you brung event. So all the teams could do whatever they wanted to their car. And then to include like open engines where they could run whatever engine they wanted to, well, how many other horsepower or whatever. You know, take the bottom of the car, the panel off the bottom of the car, different spoilers, wicker bills, all kinds of different stuff that they could add to the car or take off the car, and see how that goes. Well, that's great, but what is that going to do? What is it going to prove? It really isn't going to prove anything other than it might, with the more horsepower, it might show you have more horsepower and hopefully tires that fall off. It's going to show you're going to have a better racing product, more than likely. But I mean, it's a gimmick. And then to top it off, they were going to have, I believe, between lap 101 and 200, they were going to have a promoter's caution. So they could choose whenever they wanted to throw the yellow flag to bunch the cars back up. And it's just becoming a joke. Why do we need all these gimmicks? You know, go back the way it was in the golden era of NASCAR, the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. It was racing. You know, they had the point system like they do at any other track across the United States. You didn't have stage breaks. You didn't have championship points. You didn't have a regular season champion. You didn't have, you know, the playoffs. It was, you showed up every week, and you busted your ass and you raced as hard as you could and did the best that you could because points meant something. And there was no gimmicks. It wasn't, it was, you're just racing against your competitors. And whoever was the most ingenious and was able to dial their car in a certain way without getting outside the rules or getting caught was able to be successful. That's the kind of racing that I like, and I wish it would come back. I had no idea why they changed to this current gen car. I honestly don't. And the only thing I can say is they want to be more like IMSA or F1 or IndyCar. I mean, that's the only reason why I can think you'd want to put one lug nut on a freaking NASCAR. But I think I've went over that way too much. But, it's gotten to the point where one fan this week texted Mark Martin, and this fan said, "Can you take over NASCAR?" And Mark's response was, "I'm waiting for the call. However, in capital letters, I would not accept the offer if I did not have the final say. And that's not going to happen." And I agree with Mark. NASCAR, the France family, and it's basically a monopoly. I mean, they own a bunch of the tracks. They own the series, and that's why you got these two lawsuits going on with the 2311 and Front Row over the refusal to sign the charter paperwork, and it's crazy. I honestly think, like I've said a couple times tonight and before, I think Mark Martin and Richard Petty and Kenny Wallace, Kenny Schrader, I mean, I could go on. Some of these legendary drivers who really care about the sport could make a difference and get this sport back on track to where it needs to be. And to follow up with this is a tweet in response to a fan again. The fan basically was asking Mark Martin, why do we hear so much about money and the value now when it comes to NASCAR? And he asked, was profit always a motivator in the past? And then some other stuff. But Mark replied, in the golden age of NASCAR, the sport would never consider compromising racing for entertainment. The racing was entertaining to the fans, and there was no need to try and attract people who had no interest in cars and car racing. The sport was big enough! Exclamation point. Bigger than it is now. And I agree 100% with Mark. I talked about Michael Waltrip and how he said on Harvick's podcast like a week or so ago that he's tired of fans asking him why racing isn't as good as it used to be, and he tells them it's better, it's more competitive now than it used to be, basically when I was racing, and it's better. I don't know what Kool-Aid Michael Waltrip was drinking, but I don't agree with him at all. And I know I even shared that there was a tweet out there, and I shared that information. It was in relation to that. And I take Mark Martin, and he agreed. He liked it. He agreed with what I said. And, like I said in the past, Mark, I'm on the same page as Mark. I'm a huge fan of his, obviously. If you watch this show before, you can see right behind me, I have a whole bunch of his diecasts and stuff. I grew up watching him as a kid, and that's how I got my love of racing. I love watching him race at my local short track here in Wisconsin at Lake Geneva Raceway as a kid when he raced in ASA in the ARCO series. And it, I feel the sport is going in the wrong direction. And that leads me into my third hot take for this week, which is basically I talked the other day about the payout disparities between the three levels of racing: Cup, Xfinity, and Truck. And Bob Podcast posted today the purses for the Cup race, Xfinity race, and Truck race this weekend at Texas. And Bob's Texas purses, including payouts, all positions, and contingency awards, and postseason award contributions, and for Cup, all charter associated payouts. So for the Truck Series, the total purse for the race is $782,900. Xfinity Series is $1,651,939, and then the Cup Series is $11,055,250. So I'm like, holy crap, that is nuts. That is crazy. I get it. The Cup Series is the top series, and they have the revenue from the TV and stuff. But there is I just looked at some TV ratings. So the CW this year, the Xfinity Series is only on that channel, and the viewership is up for the Xfinity Series this year, and is averaging 1.26 million views or viewers per race on the CW. Cup is averaging 3.44 million, but their viewership is down compared to last year. An example, it showed that the Talladega race this year was down 6% in viewership from last year's Talladega race, per motorsports journalist Adam Stern. NASCAR, you should be looking at this stuff. Why is there an increase in the Xfinity Series, Truck Series? I didn't get the numbers for the Truck Series because they were off last week, but the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, they're getting good, more views, but your Cup Series is decreasing by 6% for this past race, and viewership is down for Cup races this year. That's because the product is not good, plain and simple. But we have this big disparity of over $10 million difference between Cup and Xfinity. An Xfinity Series is the better racing. I mean, they can actually pass. They can race side by side. I mean, yeah, on occasion they get the young drivers that decide to drive stupid and wreck each other, but for the most part, the racing is really good. And the Truck Series has been really good racing for the most part. NASCAR, you got to do something because, a lot of these smaller teams, that run, for example, I'm obviously a Jeremy Clements fan. Jeremy Clements is an independently owned team. He's the longest tenured Chevy driver in NASCAR. He has over 500 consecutive starts, or he has over 500 starts in the series, and he has over 400 consecutive starts in the series. He's the longest tenured driver, along with Ryan Sieg in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And a lot of times, these, for example, if he's not running good that day, he's running in mid or rear pack. Those smaller teams or those drivers, their sponsors are just as important as the ones running up at the front of the track. You need to start showing all the drivers, promoting all the drivers, instead of the Cup Series, or the Cup Series being the main thing that gets all the attention and obviously all the money. I mean, that there's no reason why you can't provide more money to these lower series to give these teams money to possibly get another car or purchase new equipment. For example, a lot of these chassis are from like Jeremy Clements Racing, from Chip Ganassi Racing. They're old, worn out chassis, but that's a lot of there's nobody that really builds Xfinity Series chassis except for the big teams, Junior Motorsports and RCR and Hendrick. Basically, is my understanding, they're the only ones that build the chassis. So you have to wait until they decide to sell those chassis so you can get a new one. These small teams, and I don't know. I just, in my opinion, that big disparity is just, it blows my mind. And you expect these Xfinity teams to drive the same distance as these Cup Series teams to these races where their expenses are just as much as the Cup Series, but you're not paying them anywhere near. I mean, you're prime example, the Portland Xfinity race. The purse is probably going to be around the 1.6 million for this Texas race. It ends up costing to drive from North Carolina, South Carolina, where the teams basically are at, to Portland, Oregon, to do a race, a standalone race, and then come back. And I think the winner of that race is probably, the winning team is going to lose money just on transportation costs, fuel costs, lodging, etc. Why don't you take that into account and help these teams out? The CW obviously has got it going on. They have a lot more viewership for the Xfinity Series. I don't know. Again, NASCAR, that's another thing that needs to be looked at. And then my final thing that I thought, hot take, I thought was very interesting. During a caution in stage 3, Jeremy Clements' spotter RC was talking to Jeremy and Case Kallenbach, Jeremy's crew chief, that he said there was a rumor going around amongst the spotters that NASCAR is going to be turning Texas, Kansas, and Las Vegas speedways into super speedways like Atlanta. They're going to redo them. Plus, there's rumor that they would be going back to Chicagoland and possibly to San Diego for a street course race. And like I said, was a week or two ago when Elton Sawyer went to the IndyCar race out in Long Beach. It was to see how IndyCar does the fan experience. And I said, I don't think so. I think it's more like they're trying to look how to do a street course race out there. Well, if this is in fact true, my suspicions were right then. They have, I don't know why, like for Cup, they make these, change the tracks, the layouts of the tracks. I don't know. They got Auto Club out in California where they tore it up. We're going to make it a short track. And now they're like abandoning it because it's going to cost too much, apparently. So I don't know. Atlanta is an awesome track now. I mean, it was a good track before, but now that it's a super speedway short track per se, it is fun racing and fun to watch, and the Cup cars are decent there. But I don't understand NASCAR's philosophy and stuff. You got a good thing, leave it alone. You don't need to, like Mark Martin said, you don't need to do all these gimmicks to get people to like racing. Racing is the entertainment. If people don't like cars, then you don't need to cater to them because they're not going to like racing. If you do all these gimmicks and stuff and start changing stuff to try to attract a new demographic or whatever to racing, you're going in the wrong direction, unfortunately, in my opinion. But I'm just a old school race fan that loved, like I said, racing back in the day. And I'm sad to see that racing is going in the wrong direction. So, but basically on that note, I'm going to end my rambling, and I'm starting to have a little bit of pain here. So for sitting too long. So, you guys have a great night. We'll see you next week. I'll be back on sometime next week. Let's just say Monday through Thursday, because it all depends on what's going on. I got a bunch of late physical therapy appointments coming up, so I'll have to wait and see when I'm going to be able to jump back on. But I appreciate everybody tuning in, joining in. Bobby, Dave, and I appreciate all our partners and sponsors and viewers. We can't do this without you guys and gals. So on that note, I'm going to thank our partners, Spartan Waste, Fox Sports Spartanburg, Harrison's Action RV, Kylie Glick Racing, Matt Mann Designs, The Runner's Roost, Alliance Drive-Away Solutions, Anna Moore Designs, Circle B Diecast, Driven Sunglasses and Driven Trackside, Elite Towing and Recovery, High Speed Auto, The Racing Warehouse and Armadillo Apparel, Belcher Cheesecake Creations, Plain Form Concrete Structures, Gale Beard Products, Wings Etc., Dialed In Focus Pouches by Whitetail Smokeless, Benzik Designs, Schatzenbach Landscaping, Enigma Tattoo Studio, Aero Parts Group, and Jeremy Clements and Jeremy Clements Racing. Again, thank you all for tuning in tonight. This is Rob with Area 51 Racing Podcast. This is episode 68. And everybody have a great night. Take care. Remember to get out and support your local racetrack and local racetrack drivers to keep the sport alive. And you never know, you may be seeing the future superstar of racing in NASCAR at your local track. Everybody have a good night. Take care, and we'll see you next week.